Welcome back, everyone, to the Hawks Film Room podcast. A bit of a hiatus, but we're back. Had a great time for the Hawks. They pulled off one of the best wins of the season for any team, not just Atlanta, coming back from a 17-point fourth quarter deficit. In fact, they were down 17 points with about 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Prior to tonight's win, or that last night's win, NBA teams in the last 20 seasons were 15 and 4,349. That is a 0.344 win percentage when trailing by 17 to 19 points with 5 to 7 minutes left. Shout out to Automatic NBA for pulling that number. That's essentially about one in every 291 games teams win in this scenario. An unreal comeback. And honestly, pretty emblematic of how this Hawks team has been this season. Hawks fans from the past couple of years will recall that, we have a tendency to sometimes play down to our competition. But another thing the Hawks were notorious for in years past was somewhat letting go of the rope down the stretch and not being able to close out games when their shots weren't falling, right? Now, this game, they actually put up 50 points in the fourth quarter, and it also did not turn the ball over. So the offense was cooking, but they actually sparked this on the defensive end. And I think that was a really important thing for this team to sort of come along one another with, because the beginning of this game, especially with Javon Carter going on a heater and then Zach LaVine's heater in the third quarter, had this looking a little bit shaky for a while. But the great thing is that the Hawks are able to put and use and really rely on their defense in these scenarios where it can get a little bit scary. So I just want to run through a couple numbers real quick before we get into the film. So this Hawks team scored 50 points in the fourth quarter, right? It was a 17-point fourth quarter comeback and a 32-7 run in the last 6 minutes. As much as this team was hitting shots, they were also limiting the Bulls defensively. And we'll talk about how their pick and roll coverage and the change that they did in that fourth quarter was really a huge driver for their success and really powered the comeback. This sequence, when I saw it run on Bally Sports, man, I was like, I felt such a euphoric feeling. I mean, you have Jalen Johnson creating out of the inverted pick and roll. You have Dyson Daniels forcing turnovers and getting the Hawks out in transition. And then, of course, you have Jalen Johnson taking this coast to coast. I mean, it was an exhilarating experience. I can only imagine what it felt like to be in the arena. And this team can be inconsistent at times. That's what happens with young teams. But there was such an energy in State Farm. And I think this, it's just such a great thing to see. Another thing I wanted to point out. So Jalen Johnson, 30 points, 15 rebounds, 75 true shooting percentage. And he had 11 points in the fourth quarter to secure the comeback. A great game for him. He's one of his 10 players this season to put up at least 30 plus points and 15 plus rebounds. Let's go ahead and look at that list. We're talking about Giannis, who's done it twice, Jimmy Butler, Anthony Davis, Nikola Jokic, Jakob Poeltl, Sabonis, Tatum, Towns, and Wemby. So pretty rare company. I know Poeltl may stick out as somewhat of a polar bear, but essentially this season, no one who isn't an all-star caliber player or fringe all-star caliber player outside of Jakob Poeltl has been this productive in this sort of way. And we'll definitely look at his game in depth. And the next thing we want to look at is getting right into the film, right? So, I like to start off positive, right? So we're going to actually juxtapose between two different types of things that I really think won the Hawks this game, right? So I mentioned very early on that the Hawks were playing defense in a particular way prior to them, really starting and sparking this comeback. And it really started with the way they were defending the pick and roll. There is somewhat of a pet peeve of mine sometimes with the way that they guard these teams that have gifted ball handlers, right? So obviously with Dyson Daniels, he gives them the option to somewhat leave him on an island against guys, of course, because he's such a great defender. What the Hawks were doing a bit too much against this Bulls team, who, mind you, is missing their best playmaker, right? Josh Giddey. They were also missing Ayo DeSumo and Lonzo Ball. So those are their higher IQ ball handlers. Of course, like Zach LaVine is a great scorer. Kobe White is growing in that aspect as well. This team was not equipped to make the high level reads that are necessary when someone gets blitzed, right? So with that in mind, the Hawks were not super aggressive in their pick and roll coverage, right? Here, Vit Krejci gets over, but Larry Nance calls out for a switch. When he calls out for the switch, it's a quick tween, crossover dribble, picks it up, and then a finish over Larry Nance for the 2 points. I thought the Hawks were conceding switches way too easily. And obviously, that can be problematic on the ball, but it can be, we'll also look at how the mismatches that resulted from it can be an issue as well. So here, mind you, Zach LaVine is on a heater. You want to keep Dyson Daniels attached as much as possible, especially when it's a small screen. There's not a ton of reason for this to be an immediate switch, especially because Gary Bird is nowhere near the caliber defender as Dyson. But this is Julian Phillips setting the screen. It's not a super heavy screen or like a screen that's going to actually create a ton of separation. And there's also no reason to respect him as an offensive player with the way that Zach LaVine was playing in the shot clock situation and his capability as a passer. But they left Garrison Matthews on an island, and he got fried. And so somewhat of the reluctance to go away from the immediate sort of like defensive scheme they had was a bit frustrating. Now, again, they did end up switching out of it. Here's another example of what a switch looks like. So here you've got a double screen. They're ultimately trying to bring Trae into this action, who's guarding Javon Carter. Garrison doesn't really try to fight through, and now it's Trae on the island against Kobe White. Very competitive. Makes him pick up this dribble, and he ends up opting for this floater over the top. But I think just in general, there's just no reason to concede a switch there like they are. Here's yet another example of them switching in the pick and roll. So this is in semi-transition. Risacher concedes this to Garrison Matthews. Garrison, who also, when he has a tough offensive night, it could be hard to justify him playing the amount of minutes he did. Obviously, his spacing when he is knocking down shots is super valuable, but I think we've seen in these clips, it can also be pretty detrimental on the defensive end. Now, I mentioned as well, like switching is not just about who's guarding on the ball. It also results in mismatches. So here, about 13 seconds in the shot clock, you have DeAndre Hunter matched up against Nikola Vucevic. You have Clint Capella matched up against Kobe White, who's someone he can't really roam off of. So as we run this play, you can see the step-up screen for Pat Williams, and then this is really, they're trying to get to Nikola Vucevic here because he has a mismatch, and Capella is occupied in the corner, of course, because he can't leave Kobe White. LaVine picks it up quick. Ball gets swung. They get it to Vucevic, and he's too deep, and that's just too much size for Jalen Johnson to contend with. Now, I do think this is a smart switch from the Hawks here, just in terms of getting Jalen Johnson back on the ball. But this is somewhat the danger of switching, especially when Vucevic, who's been really good, is able to take advantage of that. Now, there were times where they were able to actually, I think, like from defensive process wise, even though they are switching and they're getting a small on the big. Here's Dyson Daniels. Notice how Clint Capella calls this out so he can then bump off to Patrick Williams, and he can comfortably get back to Pat because he's not a super knockdown shooter. So I really like seeing this. This is the type of high level defensive stuff that great defensive teams, the Celtics, do pretty frequently. So this is great to see. And this still ends up in a bucket because, again, Vucevic has been a monster this year for whatever reason. I'm sure someone will get tricked into trading for him. And then here's another example of why you shouldn't just concede a switch really easily, especially with the way that I don't think LaVine had went on this heater at this point, but Dyson just kind of gets walked down. You don't see that same effort to try and wall off the paint here or scram switch him out of it, and that's just too easy for a really big guy. And then they also ran drop a couple times, which drop is fine, not when you have Zach LaVine on a heater. I really just don't want to see that. And so here he's absolutely destroying the Hawks. Matter of fact, let me look at his third quarter. In the third quarter, Zach LaVine, 22 points, 7 of 9 from the field, 4 assists, 6 of 6 from 3. 22 points in the third quarter. There has to be more urgency here. There's no reason to respect Taylor Horton-Tucker as a screener, and there's no reason to not make Zach LaVine a passer, especially as he goes into this gather. There's just way too much distance between Larry Nance and the ball here. They have to be up on the screen, and they have to get the ball out of his hands because, again, he's not nearly as dangerous as a passer as he is as a shooter. And I thought that the Hawks' inability to really rectify that somewhat defensive approach once LaVine got hot, once Javon Carter got hot, when Kobe White was getting to his spots, was very, very dangerous. And ultimately why they got put in that hole. Again, here's another rep. Drop coverage is just not a smart idea against someone who's this hot and this good of a pull-up three-point shooter. It's just too easy, too much space. And if And the good thing is, yes, they were able to get out of this, thankfully. But we saw the same thing with Kobe White, just too much space for a pretty decent 3-point pull-up shooter. Great thing is, they did not stick with that. Okay, they started to blitz the Bulls, which was super, super crucial. They were either blitzing or they were at the level of the screen. Remember what I said. He's not Zach LaVine is not nearly as good of a playmaker as he is as a scorer, and his handle also isn't extremely tight. Here you have Larry Nance way above the level of the screen. Now, mind you, this was a couple threes in deep from Zach LaVine, so I was kind of frustrated that it took this long. But you can see good things happen when he's at the level of the screen. Takes the ball away from him. Hawks are going the other way. He threw the ball away. Here we get our first look at the blitz, and I really attribute the Hawks switching to this scheme for them getting back into this game, alongside some stuff from Risacher, but very aggressive pick and roll coverage here. He loses the ball. This is actually, I don't think Hunter got a hand on it. This was a backcourt violation, but you can see how the pressure is rattling him a little bit. He loses it. Should have been backcourt. Larry Nance and DeAndre Hunter keep the pressure up. He throws the ball away. Trae gets to it, and DeAndre Hunter was a couple seconds away from turning that into 2 points. Unfortunately, he tried to go for a dunk and was not able to get it. Here, another great example. Let's actually go to earlier one in the game. So 3 minutes, 14 seconds on the clock. Here you get a screen from Nikola Vucevic. Javon Carter has the ball. He takes one dribble away from the pressure and tries to throw the ball over his head to Nikola Vucevic. Notice that DeAndre Hunter is already cheating over again off a weaker shooter in Patrick Williams. Already cheating over. He picks this ball up, takes it away from Vucevic. Hawks going the other way. And this shot right here was really when I knew we were going to win the game. Huge dagger from Trae, like a massive, massive, massive shot to tie the game up. I also want to point out DeAndre Hunter running here forces Trae's man, Javon Carter, to sink more than he would like to. Another great principle from the Hawks, running and getting out in transition more. And then that ends up creating just way too much space for the best deep three shooter in the NBA. Let's see. Another good example. Hawks are up 4 at this point. LaVine has the ball. Blitz comes. Forces him to hesitate, pick the ball up. Ball gets reversed to Vucevic. Now Vucevic drives the ball. DeAndre Hunter is closing out hard to Javon Carter and forcing the ball to Patrick Williams. And Patrick Williams ends up getting his shot blocked by DeAndre Hunter. And this is the value of forcing other guys to beat you, as opposed to a scorching hot Zach LaVine and then running the hot 3-point shooter off the line and forcing this pass. It becomes a much shorter closeout for DeAndre Hunter and ultimately a block shot. Let's see. Another great example here. So Zach LaVine's bringing the ball up. Screen, boom. Blitz, show heavy. Force him to pick the ball up at half court. He's not a threat there. Ball gets on to Vucevic. Vucevic catches the ball, but Jalen Johnson is right there to take it away. And that's 2 points going the other way for the Atlanta Hawks. So I thought the Hawks' anticipation was really good. I thought the fact that they were able to recognize that Zach LaVine is not going to be able to beat you with anticipation here. So he's not going to fake this and then Kobe White's going to, no, like that's not his game. That's not where he's comfortable. He's going to try and get it to the quickest outlet, the shortest outlet away from him. And the Hawks were able to read that and get away with the steals pretty easily. And then again, winning with their defense, getting out and running. Super, super important and a huge key to why they're able to win this game. Then you have Trae picking up full court. He peels off. Here comes the screen for Kobe White. Boom, 2 on the ball. He's already trying to pick the ball up. He's not comfortable in this position. Picks the ball up. Dyson cuts this off. So then he opts to go to Zach LaVine. Trae is there to cut off the paint. LaVine pivots, pirouettes, and finds Javon Carter, who again at this point had been hitting his shots, but the Hawks were able to take away the easier offense here, which is Vooch on the short roll going towards the basket or LaVine going towards the basket. And so you funnel it to, again, Javon Carter, super hot shooter, but he's a role player. You would prefer him taking these shots as opposed to Vooch or LaVine in the paint. So I thought this was a really, really good defensive process and a really good example of how they adjusted their defense to better accommodate the way that the Bulls were playing. And so I thought that was absolutely excellent from these guys. And the interesting thing too is, like, I thought that the Hawks really won this game. Or the moment I would point to where they won this game was when Zachary Risacher got an offensive foul. He shot the three. You have Patrick Williams coming towards him, right? And as Patrick Williams is coming towards him, he's trying to land, trying to make sure he has a safe landing, obviously, so he doesn't hurt his leg, and they call an offensive foul. And Risacher was hot. He was screaming. He probably said some things that I don't want to say without getting demonetized. But he was really angry. And this is a very composed, very mellow, very humble guy. And I really wish I had the clip from that because I don't think anyone who's like, I don't think anyone clipped it. But he was hot. He was super hot. And I thought that his fire was really, really important. And that emotion that he showed was really important because he was incredibly, incredibly competitive there, right? And all day, really, he was competing. This play, let me find exactly where it is. I think it was this play right here. This was directly following the three-pointer, I'm pretty sure. He was upset he didn't get it, right? So he didn't get it. Ball goes up from Jalen Horton-Tucker. Rebound bounces off. Look at Risacher just lay out and go get this. Beat two Bulls to it. You could feel the energy in the arena. You could feel the guys, like the Hawks just started really just get that passion back. It was, I think it's really hard to like obviously quantify momentum. If you looked at this screenshot, would you tell me that you think Risacher is going to get this ball? Like, this is all out effort. This is wanting it more than your opponent. This is wanting badly to contribute to winning. And I think that's what I really love about him so much. Like, people can criticize, like the ball handling, the shooting, which hasn't been there, but he wants to win. He's going to do whatever it takes to win. And I thought this play was a great example of that, just laying out. And then Dyson Daniels attacks in transition, gets all the way to the rim, right over Nikola Vucevic, who just offers zero resistance at all. I was just so impressed with him. And then, of course, I think he even got the ball on a dig there. Offensively, I thought this was a better game for him. It's really important, at least in my opinion, that the Hawks get him these shots that are easy for him and are in rhythm because as a young player, you're not going to get a lot of shots drawn up for yourself, of course. But he had 6 points in the third quarter and he had 8 in the fourth, which is a huge reason why you're able to cut this deficit. And I don't know if he has the confidence or the rhythm to knock these shots down without having this play essentially drawn up for him. So here he curls off of the Capella down screen and he just fires off the catch. It's contested. Doesn't matter. He knocks it down. So as a prospect, Risacher was really good shooting from the corner. And he wasn't that good shooting from above the break. And unfortunately, that's where the majority of his shots have come from, three-point line. He's actually pretty decent in the corners, but he's pretty below average from the wing. So I think getting him looks like these are really important because obviously it builds his confidence, but I think his rhythm, and that's just where he's more comfortable at this point in his career. And then when those shots do come, right, on the above the break threes, then he has the rhythm and the confidence to knock him down. So here he goes into a handoff with Capella. Patrick Williams goes under, and then just look at the confidence. And he really has a beautiful shot. So I'm not worried long term, but I just think the more he shoots these, the better, and it'll just be better off for the Hawks in general. And he has to be able to punish teams when they go under. He has to be able to punish them when they sag off of him. And he, like, for example, here was a clip in the fourth. Kobe White completely disrespects. Like, they're cutting off and mind you, the Hawks have been killing them in short roll all game. And the Bulls were successful in shrinking the floor against the Hawks' worst shooters. So they were sagging off of guys like Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson, Zachary Risacher, which unfortunately those are all the three guys in our starting lineup. And so when they're not playing with offensive confidence and teams feel like they can neglect them as offensive players, it becomes even harder for a more limited offensive roster to create offense, right? And so that's why it's so important that they not only just knock these shots down, but they shoot them with confidence so they can punish defenses. And I thought Risacher did that really well. Like, caught it straight into his motion, knocked it down. He had a pretty bad above the backboard miss, but I thought for the most part he played a really good game. And we'll talk a little bit about his limitations and where he can grow. I just love how active he is. I love how opportunistic he is. Gary Bird is going to fire this shot up, and who goes to grab it? It's Risacher right over Kobe White, puts it up, and then just able to get over everyone. I heard the Bulls announcers say, is that a over the back? I don't actually see a lot of contact there. I think he, obviously Kobe didn't fall by himself, but this just seeking the opportunity to go up and get it, snag it over the smaller guy. understanding that there's no big on the floor that can block his shot and just get it right to the glass. Like, he finds ways to be impactful. This is what he wants to do. I think too, like, he flashes these really skillful things. So here, inside hand scoop layup, that was pretty. There's still some area for him to grow, and I think one thing is like the in between game, and just like somewhat operating in like a when teams are giving him space in the mid range. So here he's going to run a pick and roll Clint Capella. He gets space here, but he's not looking to shoot. He's not necessarily comfortable in getting to the mid range pull up. Here he has opportunity to snake it and get over to this somewhat elbow right here. He's tall enough to where this is an open shot for him, but he's not comfortable doing that just yet. And so instead, he engages with Vucevic's body and then tries to pivot around him and get to a scoop, somewhat hook kind of shot. And it's just not a great shot against a bigger guy. And here's another example where he's just a little bit awkward in these positions. He's not exactly comfortable. So he's going to attack the closeout. Great. This is really good. This is really, really good. Like, LaVine is gone. There's no one who can stop him at this point. He has to be able to read where this defender is going to be and decide whether this is going to be a pass or a shot. Capella is open here. He's open here. He's open here. He's open here. But Risacher decides to gather and try to go up for a layup. The lob is here as an option, maybe a wraparound, maybe a bounce pass. But Capella is pointing up. You want to throw it right here. He's not comfortable with doing that just yet. And so it results in a tough layup and a pretty bad miss, as opposed to what could have been 2 points, which I think he will be able to get to just from some of the passing that we've seen from him as of late. But I think in general, like, the Hawks do not win this game without his energy. They don't win his game without his fire, his passion. He had I have to find the clip. I have to find the clip. He had a block on Kobe White that was so ridiculous. He basically went up, grabbed his shot, and spiked it against the floor. They called a foul, and it was a foul probably, but I thought that play, like, I just loved what I saw from him from a passion perspective. I have to pull it up. All right, so I was able to find the clips, right? So let's go ahead and look at them. So I think these two moments, the first one being the offensive foul, is what really galvanized the Hawks, right? So this was before the LaVine flurry, right? Here comes Risacher, again, being very opportunistic, finding space, making himself available with Dyson as an offensive option. Catches, reckless closeout from Julian Phillips. Risacher's trying to get his leg down. Does kick out a little bit. Ends up falling during the shot. Knocks it down. Everyone in the arena thinks it's going to be an and one. Ends up being an offensive foul call. You don't get the full reaction from Risacher here, but he was hot. He was hot. He was super upset with that call. Then, fourth quarter, I think this one was my favorite. This dude was, I just loved how he was talking. I love how upset he was. I love the passion, the fire. Kobe White, okay, rejects the screen, Risacher's with him step by step. In my opinion, a bit of a hook here by Kobe. Risacher goes up. Now, he does hold on to his arm, but he goes up and just spikes that right to Jalen. You can see him. He's upset. He's upset. He's emoting. He's hot. Got to the point where Larry Nance had to calm him down. And I think what's so great about this moment, right, is that, like, we know this kid really wants to win. Like, all of his pre-draft intel, the way he speaks is like, okay, I'm going to do everything for the team to win, whatever the team needs me to do to win. And I think this passion, like putting it on the defensive end and trying to be impactful any way he can, is just a great sign of his development going forward. But I just love seeing how committed he is, how frustrating it is to not feel like he's getting the right type of calls. It was to the point where I was listening to the Bulls broadcast. They were like, he's a rookie. You can't let a rookie talk to you like that. Take him up. I'm like, look, man, they're giving him some leeway. And I was happy to see it because I think this was the energy the Hawks needed, particularly at this point in the game. And so it had to come from someone, and it came from their rookie. That's not pretty typical of most NBA teams, but I love that he was able to give them that sort of spark. Now, let's go ahead and look at some other film. And I think I want to start again by looking at Dyson Daniels' aggressiveness. I mentioned a little bit earlier. The Hawks offense goes it's just so much better when both him and Risacher can be aggressive now. In some of the conversations we had in group chats that I have, with some Hawks fans, it's okay. Well, how do you build consistency as an offensive player or aggressiveness? Like it comes from consistency. So if you can't be a consistent offensive player, then it's hard to have that trust to always be looking for your shot or shoot with confidence, right? And so I think it's going to be touch and go with both of these guys. Risacher, I think, honestly, in some ways, is more aggressive than Dyson, especially from the 3-point line. But as they get to be more comfortable shooters and scorers overall, we'll start to see that consistency creep up. But when they bring it like they did last night, you get 16 from Dyson, 15 from Risacher, actually 16 from Risacher, 15 from Dyson. The Hawks are a much tougher team to guard. So here you got Vit Krejci coming off of the ghost screen from DeAndre Hunter, gives it to Daniels. He's got THT in front of him, not a great defender. Quick jab, attack him. He opens up his hips, and he's able to get to a nice little semi-Euro step. Brings it over him, gathers, keeps it high, and then easy floater, nice touch. In general, I thought he was pretty good attacking defenders when they were not leveraged. So Zach LaVine, not a great perimeter defender. As soon as Dyson recognizes that, swipes his hand down, goes down, gets downhill, puts his back to him, and he has. I really just love his footwork. Sometimes it can be he can get a little bit too, caught up in doing like twists and turns. But here, I think this is a good step through, a little pump fake, and then steps through, and then Dalen Terry is not the type of shot blocker who can really deter him. That was a nice little rep. Here he's gonna attack off. Again, this really nice hustle play from Risacher. Gets out in transition, confidently attacks. Yes, a 7-footer, but who's not a great shot blocker. Attacks with speed. I don't think he's doing this in New Orleans. I think he's had consistently great growth as an offensive player. This is 4 Hawks in the backcourt. He's going against 4 Bulls, essentially. But he turns on the Jets, dusts Javon Carter, keeps the ball away from him, and then he's able to get all the way to the rim with a nice little pickup right above Vooch's arm. This was the first point of the game. I liked how you're gonna watch him stampede off the catch here. So stampeding is basically you're already running before you catch the ball. So Risacher is driving the ball. He knows LaVine is going to sink in because teams are trying to dig on Risacher's handle. And so when the ball comes to him, he's already moving and he's able to get all the way to the basket. So here, cutting, easy, and then ends up not converting. But I think this is really good offensive process. Keeps the ball away from the digs and it gets it high up over the shot blocker. Who again, you call him a shot blocker, but he can be a presence at times. So I think I would like to see him engage Vucevic here again because he's not a great shot blocker. But I think otherwise pretty good rep. He's become sneakily good at hitting these clutch threes. Like, I don't know. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but I feel like he has not missed a lot of these. Like he's been knocked down. He's got the trailer coming, knows the shot has to go up, knocks it down anyway. I really like this pump fake and this, small relocation here. Pat is digging. He's digging again. The Bulls are trying to disrespect some of the more inconsistent shooters. He knows his closeout's going to be long, so he's going to run at him confidently. Even with the time ticking on the clock, he knows he has the time to get a pump fake and a dribble down. Does that, shoots him in rhythm. And just a vastly improved offensive player from what he was in New Orleans. And the more he continues to display this, I mean, the defensive impact alone is ridiculous. He has 90 steals. Next closest that has 57. He's gonna set records for deflections. He might set just overall just disruptiveness records, whether it's advanced stats or just regular counting stats. He's having a special defensive year, and the more he can play like that offensively, I mean, it's going to be tough. Also, want to show Jalen Johnson some love. So we talked about a little bit earlier. He had his first career 30 and 15 game. What I love about Jalen is the versatility in that he scores the ball. So here we're going to see a 45 cut in transition. Here's the weak side block from Larry Nance. Jalen gets the rebound, gives it up. Trae's looking for him. He tells him, cut. Right here. He's like, Trae, he's like, cut through, face cut these guys because he knows there isn't a shot blocker. And Jalen ends up doing it. Torrey Craig can't hold him in space. And it's straight to the basket. To the Baja, not the basket. I thought he really flexed his size in this game. Dyson brings the ball up, flips it back to Jalen. Let's attack Taylor Horton-Tucker in space. He can't hold him. Boom, boom, step through. Nice finish. We showed this a little bit earlier, where this is where he blitzes Vucevic and takes the ball away. I thought the inverted pick and roll looked a lot better, and it's gotten better as of late. I've complained about it in the past. Here he is getting downhill. Trae's going to come to the inverted pick and roll. Julian Phillips opens his hips. As soon as he opens his hips, anticipating the pick and roll, I'm sure Javon is saying something here. Jalen reads that, attacks his outside foot, and he's getting downhill. At this point, it's pretty much over, buddy. He's just too strong, too fast. Just sheds him straight to the bucket. Another really great thing I'm seeing from Jalen as of late is he's recognizing these lob windows. Here, Hawks need a bucket. Minute 40, get to the inverted pick and roll. Vucevic is, I don't even know what he's doing. Like, this is really bad defense. He's a full 10 feet away from Clint Capella. Patrick Williams is not in position to block him out. Throws it over the top. 2 points. Again, he's another great example of the lob and his growth as a passer. So short roll, boom, get it to him. Recognizes Vooch, slides over, throws it up where only Capella can get it. I just love his versatility, off-ball scoring, on-ball scoring, and creation for others. Transition threat, half-court threat with his size. Here he makes a great back cut to Patrick Williams, who is a pretty spacey defender. He's prone to things like this. He's not active. He's not paying attention. Everyone has their eyes on Trae. Jalen recognizes this and cuts to the open space, knowing again that there's no one in the paint who can stop him. And that's just a beautiful cut. He was pretty active on the glass, of course, 15 rebounds. Here he's got a small on him. He knows he can get to it. He just sheds him, 2 points. And then here flexing his ability to run the pick and roll as a ball handler and not just be the actual roller. Ball gets swung to him. Here comes Clint Capella. Jalen reads it, and he's going straight to the rim, right over Nikola Vucevic. And I also want to talk a little bit here about Risacher's fluidity as a ball handler. Like, sometimes it looks pretty rough, but that's smooth. Gets right to his behind the back, putting pressure on the defense. Jalen makes himself available as an option, and then he just attacks off the catch. And then he's able to reverse pivot, get to the bucket. Now, there's some room for growth, of course. In general, he has to be better attacking mismatches. He's too strong and too skilled to not consistently finish on these possessions. I think anytime he has a small like this, he needs to go in their chest. He backs him down, creates some space, but then he's going laterally as opposed to towards the bucket. I would have liked to see him get one more pound dribble in here. You see he was able to move Kobe White back at least a decent amount. I think it's the strength comes and the more comfortability in the post comes, he'll get there. But in general, I think he needs to stop going laterally. Also a foul here from Kobe White, but he shouldn't be able to be moved like this. They're not going to call that a good amount. And so you can see his upward mobility was somewhat stopped by the way that Kobe was able to push his hips out away from the basket. And so he needs to be better at getting to the basket. This is, again, not a huge thing. I think in general, Jalen may sometimes opt to finish with finesse when he doesn't necessarily need to. So Torrey Craig hits this three. Ball gets taken out. Trae is going to run this with Jalen. Jalen's going to get wide open here. Like, he's just wide open. Just turn and dunk it, Just turn and dunk it. There's no shot blocker on the floor. The closest thing to that is Jalen Smith. Instead, he goes for this scoop, somewhat like of a jelly fillet finish. And it's an ugly miss. And for the Hawks at this point, who were struggling offensively, just dunked the ball. But outside of that, no notes. Was very, very happy with the way he was playing. I want to talk about get some Javon Carter slander in. Now, Javon is someone who takes these matchups personally. In college, him and Trae had some battles. Because of that, Javon he really wakes up and he's like, okay, we got the Hawks on the calendar. This is what I live for. This is what I train for. I'm bringing my best. Javon Carter averages 1.7 points per game. Do you know what he had against the Hawks last night? The man had 26 points. He had 19 in the first quarter. Before that, his most in the quarter was 15 against the Bucks, where he had about 36 points. Again, this is anyone in the NBA is capable of going off 100%, right? This guy only does this against us. He's a try-hard player in general, right? At West Virginia, they played a full court press. It's nothing new, and I really respect his commitment on the defensive end, and he's always been a decent shooter. But 19, 7 of 7 from three, that's ridiculous. 6 of 6 from three. I mean, he also had, I think, 2 4-point opportunities. So yeah, it was really important that Trae was able to give it back to him at least at some level. And then of course also win the game. Trae's fourth quarter, 9 minutes, scored 16 points, 4 of 5 from the floor, 2 assists, 6 of 6 from the free throw line. Big, especially after he missed those free throws against San Antonio that lost the game. This guy put 15 points on Javon Carter's head, 4 or 5 from the floor, 3 assists. I'll just let the reel run as I talk. I had to slow it down a little bit because there were some West Virginia fans who were talking mess on Twitter. I thought Trae had himself a really good sort of bounce back game. Now, he took a lot of threes, didn't make a lot of threes, went 4 of 11, but he took care of business at the line, had just 2 turnovers, and again, had a massive class in the fourth. And I think as he's finding his shot, which he definitely has over the last couple games, I think he's getting healthier. We can expect a little bit more offensive consistency from him. And obviously, like, this offense is nothing without him on the floor. I think we saw the way we looked against Memphis without him. And just in general, he is still a premier offensive talent in the NBA. And if his shot's falling, then you have a real problem on your hands. Now, one thing I want to point out, two things actually. I saw this clip first posted by Nekias Duncan on his Twitter. This is just a really good example of how hard it is to guard Trae Young, right? He's getting off the pick and roll. Okay. Watch how he gathers this layup attempt. Gathers it high. Watch what Vucevic is doing. He doesn't really know at this point if this is a layup or not. Clint Capella is still in position to get that layup. And so he's going to fall off. And he's going to actually allow Trae to get right to the rim because he really could not tell whether that was going to be a layup or not. So I think he's such a master of trickery. He's such a manipulative player in all the best ways possible. Not in the way that the media portrays him in terms of a leader, but like on the actual court, nobody knows what to do. And so I thought this was a really good example of why he's such a tough guy to guard. And then in general, too, I thought we're getting game examples every game, multiple examples every game, but the off-ball stuff, the relocation, a lot of times, I think Nekias said, like, teams are expecting a pass back for him coming back for the handoff or, coming sort of a relocation. But here he's going to relocate off of the pass. Risacher is able to find him open for 3. He doesn't knock it down. But I think this is just a really good offensive wrinkles that the Hawks are mixing in. Where, of course, Trae can be really dominant on the ball. But I think we're seeing these ball-dominant, heliocentric guys embracing playing off the ball now that they have guys around them who can get them open. So really good stuff from Trae last night, and the type of stuff that he's been doing his whole career. We're going to finish up by looking at just some general, negative stuff. I don't want to start off with that. But, obviously I thought the defense was really, really good in the fourth quarter, and it got better in the third. But there's always room for improvement, right? And I think in general, and I've talked about this a lot on the pod, I don't like how the Hawks pickup points are so terrible in transition. They're terrible. I think this is kind of just knowing your personnel, knowing tendencies, but then also trusting that the rest of your team is getting back. Risacher is a little bit preoccupied with protecting the paint, but you have Jalen and Capella there. To me, Kobe White is going up for this 3 as soon as he takes that dribble. And so it's just a little bit more urgency getting there. Also, the positioning. The Hawks have a tendency to turn their back on the ball. Here is going to be Trae doing it. He's opening up and not like what my coach always would tell me is like, keep your butts at the baseline. Obviously, there's going to be situations where that doesn't happen. But this opens you up to backdoor cuts every time. And so you have to constantly look for your man. To Trae's credit, he does look for Javon here, but he still sneaks behind him and finds that sort of like open space for the floater. Here's a worse example from DeAndre Hunter. So Hunter here is guarding Javon Carter. Now, remember, keep in mind, Javon is having himself a game. He had himself a game, right? He should be priority number 2 right now. Levine is around the rim, but he's pretty bottled up. We're not worried about these 2 guys. We're just not. You're also not doing anything at this point. If you're going to be positioned like this, you're not helping, you're not digging. As the guy who's one pass away, you have to be attached to your man, especially if it's Javon Carter, who's having a great game. You cannot simply turn your head, turn it again, and still not do anything. And so what ends up being a really tough shot for Javon, and like a lot of kudos for knocking that shot down. But DeAndre Hunter should never even allow that pass to get through. It shouldn't have even been an option. Garrison Matthews, I pointed out some of his defensive shortcomings, but I thought in general his some of his positioning was pretty bad too. Again, Garrett, we're at a point where Javon Carter is completely on fire. Got to stay attached, or at least call for the switch a little bit earlier. He kind of just turns his head and lets it happen, and there's still time at that point to get back into the play. So just kind of knowing your personnel, man, that would help. It would help a lot. And then some of the overhelping stuff, I feel like this is something that's plagued the Hawks for a long time. Especially like they'll overhelp indiscriminately. Like not everyone needs to have the defense collapse on them. Kobe White, good player. He's not LeBron James. He's not Zion Williamson. He's not anyone who would necessitate this level of commitment within the paint. There are 5 Hawks in the paint. And I do think to some extent the Hawks are trying to really limit points in the paint. I think that's a big emphasis from them defensively this year, which is fine. You can do it with 3. DeAndre Hunter needs to be splitting the distance here. He doesn't, if he's going to do this, if they're going to bump Jalen Johnson down, I just don't think it's something you need to do against everybody. And then one more pickup point thing. That is not the right clip. But I think that's all the film we have. I want to finish by talking about a trend that the Hawks had consistently somewhat allowed against the Bulls, right? So going into this game, we were 0-2 against the Bulls. It's pretty important that we beat a team like this because the Bulls are probably going to be, at least for right now, we have similar records. And if you don't want to come down to another situation like last year where the tiebreaker determined who had a home game. And so that made it a lot tougher for us, obviously, in the play-in. The Bulls are a pretty high transition frequency team, right? Chicago came in at 9th in transition frequency percentage. We were 1-6 when we allow opponents to get out in transition on 19% or higher of their offensive possessions. And the reason why that's a pretty high correlation is when teams get out in transition, they have a higher points per possession because the defenses aren't set. And so when the Hawks allow teams to attack them when the defenses aren't set, they have these somewhat cross matches in transition or miscommunications, or Trae gets matched up against the center, stuff like that. So you really want to avoid that. And the Bulls broke that mark in both of their matchups versus the Hawks. The Hawks were able to hold them to around 15% of their possessions coming in transition in last night's game, which is really important. Chicago was also one of the worst teams at turning transition opportunities into points. They're 27th in points added in transition. And the games against the Hawks that converted at a high rate, they added 7 points and 6 points per possession, per 100 possessions. Last night's game is around 5.9, but they were at a much lower frequency than they did in the previous games we played them. Chicago also was able to turn 87.5% or so of their live ball turnovers, of the Hawks live ball turnovers of the transition opportunities, and also push the ball off of live rebounds above 35%. And so both of those times, the Hawks were 1-9 when teams broke that mark. And so the Hawks were able to, somewhat limit them a little bit in terms of how much they were pushing the pace. And they also were able to limit the amount of those live ball turnovers that turn into transition opportunities. So just in general, a much better outlook in terms of transition defense, switching the scheme once it became very, very clear that Zach LaVine was going to fry us, really condensing that paint and forcing them to beat us with the passing where they didn't necessarily have the playmakers to punish those passes over the top against the blitz. The Bulls, to their credit, were sharing the ball really well at the start of the game. I think they finished with somewhere around 30-ish assists, I want to say. They finished with 36, but a lot of that came in the first, second, and third quarters. I thought they were a lot more stagnant in the fourth quarter, and they weren't necessarily able to generate those same quality shots against the blitz. And that's a testament to the Hawks defense, their anticipation on those swing passes, but it's also leveraging their length, their versatility, and leading into a different defensive scheme when the game necessitated it. So I thought that was really good. In terms of criticism for Quinn, I don't know if I would have played Garrison Matthews 18 minutes tonight. Larry Nance needs to be a little bit better defensively. DeAndre Hunter Started off a bit rough, but he found his footing as an offensive player as well. So you get 25, 3 Hawks scoring 25 plus points. Jalen Johnson's first 30 and 15 game. Another 27, 25-ish points, 12 plus assists game from Trae Young. DeAndre Hunter is now one of the best. He's been all season, but especially now that he's playing more games, one of the best bench scorers in the NBA. Dyson Daniels being disruptive. Risacher playing confidently. A lot of things to really like from last night's game. And hopefully some momentum they can take against a Heat team that's coming off a pretty big win themselves. Game winner from Tyler Hero. So we'll see how they look tomorrow, and we'll have the breakdown relatively soon after that game, since it's 3 p.m. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, subscribe, add the podcast on any sort of podcast platform that you listen to. Give it a 5-star review, and I'll see you in the next one. Y'all be safe.